Welcome once again friends to the NPTEL MOOC module on strategic trade and protectionism. This is our 35th lecture on on specifically on non-tariff measures, non-tariff areas, which is very important in the present days WTO negotiations, where the developing countries largely emphasizing or having large number of measures on this channel. So, the present title is specifically meant for understanding the important aspect of non-tariff measures is sanitary and phytosanitary measures called SPS under WTO negotiation. Let us have a start like this. So, do you know that agricultural products having worth 1,765 US billion US dollar were traded in 2013. WTO rules actually helped in ensuring this product being traded safely, and that health protection measures are not used as an excuse for protecting domestic producers. Usually, there are many instances where health related protections have been imposed by the importing country not to import their product. So, now the agricultural product actually went off with its value 1765 billion US dollar. So, due to the protections. Now, let us start with the introduction on SPS. As we already discussed, non-tariff measures where standards or regulations are required instruments which actually instrument in protecting the products. This simply whereas the simple average taxation called most favored nation tariff continues to decline, whereas these are the channels where the restrictions are increasing. Non-tariff measures such as SPS standards are on rise, as I already mentioned. So, agreement specifically on these perspective SPS measures came into existence, setting out the basic rules for food safety, animal and plant health standards. We will discuss this what exactly on it, sanitary and phytosanitary measures. These they were fundamentally discriminatory, because there used to be no standard coding standardization made. So, therefore, discrimination is observed. So, therefore, in different rounds of WTO discussion is useful on this. This has led to disguised protection of domestic agriculture sector in particular countries. SPS agreement allows countries to set their own standards because of those agreements, and to protect their country, this sets. This regulation must be, these kind of regulation must be on science, based on science, and should be applied only to the extent necessary to protect human, animal or plant life or health related aspects. The agreement encourages members to use international standards, guidelines and recommendations. So, SPS agreement also established a committee, likewise in TBT we discussed, called Sanitary and Phytosanitary Measures Committee, to protect or to provide forum for consultations. This committee normally meets 3 times a year and issues regular guidelines for all the member countries. While the agreement was meant to have harmonized codes or harmonizing member countries NTF related to agriculture product, the use of international standards, guidelines and recommendations is not legally binding. This is clearly written, where in the earlier case, in the case of TBT, it was binding, but here it is these are the attempt in harmonizing the member countries relating to those NTF measures, but not legally binding. So, there are many diversion expected. These exceptions in the application of these exceptions in the application of SPS and TBTs measures have led to some imbalances in the process of WTO negotiation as a whole because of the non-binding principle. Therefore, the prevalence of non-trade measures measures differs by economic sectors, and sectors related to agriculture tend to be regulated by SPS more and as compared to export measures. SPS measures are typically applied to the agriculture products and to other products that have been inherent health hazards due to contaminants, due to heavy possibility of contamination or containing with contaminants. So, the regulatory framework those are relating to the NTM, especially SPS and TBTs differ across countries as we mentioned earlier, and those are very pervasive in European Union, China, Australia, and less used to be in low income countries. Now, let us count down the prevalence of those measures. This is the diagram we have already explained in our previous lectures. Again, we are emphasizing because the topic is on SPS, we will emphasize the extent of SPS over time. And so far as an NTM in the world trade is concerned, by its frequency, by its coverage ratio, by sector, specifically by sector category. Let us start with here SPS here is coverage ratio is around 20%, less than 20%, TBT is much higher, and SPS for sector wise composition. Now, look at it is the highest. So far as agriculture sector is concerned, the protection is even higher than that of the TBTs, but it is much lower in manufacturing sector and in a natural resource component. Now, digging further to the explanation, we can understand even better. So, now 30% are on the product line so far as TBTs are concerned, and 70% by which 70% world is actually affected. Now, price control measures affect about 50% of the world trade, whereas SPS affect around 20% of the world trade. So, therefore, here 70% by TBT which impact SPS still and its composition is lower than that of other component. So, export measures are frequently applied to international trade, still their use is largely related to agriculture sector. Most of the world agriculture trade subject to the forms of TBT and SPS. Now, understanding by sector and in detail of SPS, here we are mentioning SPS as compared to TBTs. SPS, the sectors which attract highest measures are animal products, vegetable products, oil and fats, food and food products. Rest of the products, as we already mentioned, attaches very less component, and these are largely agriculture products, and near about 90% to 100% percentage point, because and largely emphasized by the developing countries. Whereas in case of TBT by sector, there are in many other sector where TBTs are actually imposed. So, agriculture sector attaches highest amount of SPS over time. Now, we have already opened this particular page in our previous lecture, but we did not emphasize on SPS. Now, let us look at SPS in detail. So, it is certainly SPS related to not related to technical regulation standards, it is particularly on a aspect called human or animal life from risk and arising from additives, contaminants, toxins or disease causing organism in their food, beverages and feedstuffs. So, these are the areas where it is applied. Human life from a plant or animal carried diseases is also looked at. Animal or plant life from pest diseases, disease causing organism, etc. A country from damaged from damage caused by the entity, establishment or spread of pest. These are also by which SPS is applied. If a country or damage caused by the country by the entry, like you might have heard in the announcement at the time of immigration checks to the other European countries or Western countries, they specifically announce any kind of entry with your product, with your plant should not contaminate our country's plants or health. So, this is actually some of the products where some kind of expectations related to these segments are observed, they raise complaints. So, we have already discussed that. Now, looking at the latest estimates of SPS measures, approximately 14,786 under TBTs were 11,434 under SPS measures were notified to WTO till December 2010, but that number is actually manifold till 2014. We have the number, we will discuss in terms of product coverage. TBT notification related to approximately 75,995 products at the HS level 4 digit, and the SPS notifications are applicable only to applicable to more than 90,665 products. So, the average product coverage of a single SPS notification is 8, approximately 8 products. Now, the non-tariff measures increase actually from 576 notifications in 1995 to 1305 in 2004 and subsequently doubled to by 2010. These NTM standard notifications have seen an upward rise since 1995. So, contrary to the trend of falling average tariffs of the WTO members. Now, looking at different tariff lines, and here tariff lines, we can understand this is the source from WTO Center for WTO Studies database. We are referring this document, and these are as per the database they calculate it by using the the intellectual trade solution, WITS database, World Intellectual Trade Solutions. So, from there they calculate the details. Now, SPS notifications, now you can see this has been rising, these are highlighted in red color, whereas the TBT notification is also rising in multiple percentage. Now, over the past 20 years, now looking at till 2014, we are now referring to 2014 data. From since 1995, WTO members have submitted nearly 18,000 notifications. So, till 2010, the notifications are 1399 by SPS notifications. Now, here I think I have already mentioned 11,434, whereas till in total it is 2014, but in only 1 year it is of 1399 only in 2010. If you add it all those years since 1995, it is 11,334 till 2010. Now, till 2014 this number went to 18,000 notifications as identified by the SPS committee. The share of notifications from developing countries actually has gone up significantly over the years. Now, SPS notification by WTO members till 2014, as I just said. So, it is rising. Now, this diagram is also dividing developed as well as developing countries notifications. So, number of notifications are mentioned on left panel, whereas it is years, the time over the time is mentioned on the horizontal axis. Now, look at here, the developed countries is in green color and developing countries in another color, where over the time so far as SPS notifications are concerned, developing country used to be raising number of notifications. Since there is no binding clauses raised by the member countries, and as per the agreement it is not binding. So, developing countries used to have higher notifications over the time. Now, in the recent time, look at 2014 data, more than over 1000 notification out of 1600 plus notifications, 1600, I mean more than 1000 notifications are actually raised by developing countries. Now, so far as STCs, as I already told, special technical concerns are raised in the SPS committee from 1995 to 2014. Over the last 20 years, as we have counted in the last data, there are around 39% notifications are raised related to animal health. The food which are actually imported by the member countries, they raise that this is certain hazardous to the animal health. Also, around 31%, highest is with animal related health complaints, and 31% related to food safety, and plant related health related to 25% out of the all complaints, only 5% related to other type of complaints. So, the member countries have actually raised 384 specific trade concerns, special trade concerns. These are exactly called specific trade concern STC in the SPS committee. Out of 382 specific complaints have been recognized, 39 are related to animal health. More than 45% of these were subsequently reported as resolved or partially resolved. So, 45% have been resolved, another 55% have not yet been are yet disputed or are not yet been solved. So, what is important here is due to the fact that out of 18,000 complaints or the notifications raised, only 384 have been recognized or raised as the specific trade concerns. Now, counting different time period by pre-Doha and post-Doha deadline, we could see here that TBD notifications in the pre-Doha round, pre-Doha deadline were 4.6, whereas post-Doha it is actually multiple times, at least more than 5 times, I mean at least 5 times higher than the pre-Doha round. Similarly, SPS notifications were higher actually in the pre-Doha round, and comparatively lower in the post-Doha round. It has export growth relationship from 1995 to 2010. Export growth was actually 9.2%. Here SPS notification in this, it has export growth of 13.2%. In this connection, nearly NTM was 9.4% in the pre-Doha round, where it is 17.4% in the post-Doha round. Now, increasing the trend of SPS related standards can be divided into two phases, as I already said, and accordingly we can divide the two time periods and interpretation can be made, and we have already discussed this. Increase in the SPS notification in 2010 compared to 1995 notifications. Now, this is red one is developed countries and the blue one is for the developing countries. Now, here the number of times increase from the base of 1995. Number of times increase as compared to the 1995 is of 7.5% increase for the developing countries, and for the developed it is only 4 percentage point. Now, looking at the SPS measures during the same period 95 to 1995 to 2010, where number of notifications we have already emphasized 1399 in this particular year. This has gone up to gone up to, I mean in total it is 11,000 plus notifications over the years till 2010, but that rate has gone again increased to, we have already said 18,000. So, in 2014. Look at the SPS notifications highlighted in the box, I mean in the bar diagram, whereas the cumulative SPS notifications are explained in the line diagram. Whereas the participating countries, when they are participating countries, other participating countries are also mentioned, their rate is not rising. Now, so far as SPS measures for developed and developing countries are concerned, already we have discussed some of the facts. Now, we may also talk about some other facts based on the results, but derived by different experts. In 1995, developed WTO members made 79 SPS notifications, while the developing WTO members made 122 or 122 notifications. By 2000, this trend has reversed, while the developing or the WTO member countries showing a decrease in the notification. In 2001, notifications are actually by developing member countries started to increase again and continue to rise until 2005. It is clearly highlighted from the diagram. Now, one significant reason of this increase in developing countries participation in this phase was notifications by China following its accession to WTO since 2001. So, China has started raising huge number of notification. In 2006 particularly, there was a sudden increase in notification by both developed and developing WTO members, which has led to nearing doubling of the annual notifications. The rising trend during 2006 to 2009 was dominated by developing countries, particularly, as we have already discussed. Here is the difference, it is rising especially from 2006 to 2009-10, and of the 20 members among the developed category, largest notifier of SPS measures were United States, followed by China, followed by Canada, European Union, New Zealand, Australia and Japan. With regard to SPS measures, some of the developing members with significant high notifications were Brazil, Republic of Korea, China, Peru. Brazil has 185 notifications, followed by Republic of Korea of half of that. Then Taiwan, province of China, then Mexico, Thailand, etc. This is the highest presence of standards was among the Asian and Latin American countries, we have already discussed. So, concluded that, based on this, concluded that these SPS and TV standards have on the whole had a negative impact on trade. The large number of studies actually observed this, which is, what is interesting here in this fact is that the measures do not deter exports and imports between OECD member countries, Organization of Economic Cooperation and Developing members. So, between the OECD countries, this has not deteriorated, this has not undermined their trade. However, they do constrain exports from developing and least developed countries, that is a matter of concern. Therefore, it is evidential to the fact that these standards do not do have an impact on the overall market access scenario in the developed countries, because developing countries are actually concerned highly on those aspects. Approximately 90% of the SPS notifications submitted to WTO Secretariat does not contain HS code details. Therefore, those are left to the discretionary powers of the powers vested in custom authority at the borders of the implementing country. Since HS labeling were not mentioned, so those customs may take advantage and they have the discretionary power to receive or not to receive. So, trends in the use of SPS objectives so far, large number of notifications by developed members have been on food safety, and human health, whereas whereas I mean this is followed by animal health, which was of only 15%, and plant protection was of 12%, human health of 5%, consumer protection and animal and human health is only of 1% each. So, these are the trend of protection to different extent. Now, that could be explained here. Food safety 66% larger segment, followed by I mean here it is mentioned 11% plant health protection, human health of 6%, then I mean here another 60%, followed by animal and human health of 16%, then plant and health protection of 11%, like this as per the calculation made by the Center for WTO Studies, New Delhi. So, developing members application of objectives 47% towards food safety and health, then around 22% or 25% on plant health and the environment, 22% on animal health and food safety. So, regarding India's context from 1995 till the period July 2010, India made 84 SPS notifications only, as against 364 notifications China made, even if China joined in 2001. So, covering out of 2440 products at the 4-digit level, India only could able to file 84 SPS notifications. So, these are mentioned here. Now, here is the 84 notifications. Cumulatively, it is also given yearly SPS measure is also given in the line diagram. So, the major rise of those are from 2005-6 onwards, there has been a huge rise in the notifications. Now, India's SPS measures and use of their objectives 63% on food safety, followed by 22% on plant protection, 8% animal health, human health is of 7%. Now, looking at Indian SPS measures and national and international standards of 82%, national standards of 18%. They are overlapping with national and international standards. The presence of MSMEs in the Indian economy is relatively high. However, there are varying figures on the share of the sector, the GDP primarily on account of the fact that the sector is unorganized. India therefore has been the most significant I mean in India this has been the most significant challenge for the introduction of new SPS measures to protect its agriculture sector, especially for the food processing sectors. Now, there are certain transparency clauses attached, likewise in TBT technical barriers to trade we discussed. You can follow this slide or better to follow from the WTO website on transparency clauses. We have already discussed some extent. Now, we are discussing a case which is very interesting so far as WTO and SPS measures are concerned. One case is very interesting to note here, resolving a trade concerns cinnamon exports from Sri Lanka. Now, look at I mean in 2005 and early 2006, Sri Lanka raised a specific trade concern, especially in the SPS committee about the European Union's import restrictions on its cinnamon exports. Okay. So, the concern was actually in the early 2006. So, the issue was actually Sri Lanka's traditional practice. Issue was here mentioned as practice of burning sulphur as the way of protecting cinnamon from possible fungi and insects. So, that was the concern raised by European Union to restrict this product. While this practice does not require direct application of sulphur on the cinnamon, it does leave some residue and European Union especially its directive setting maximize residue levels for sulphur dioxide. prevented Sri Lanka's cinnamon exports from entering the European Union market. So, they have the standard where in the WTO negotiations, I mean in the SPS standard this was not set. We will just mention in raising the trade concern, Sri Lanka said there was no international standard for sulfur levels in cinnamon. Though European Union has already set a standard by which they restrict, but in the WTO negotiation this was not mentioned. So, which has led to I mean raising the complaints in SPS agreements. Now, Codex Alimentarius Commission was at that time in the process of considering the use of sulfur dioxide as the additive, but not develop maximum permitted residue levels in for the cinnamon. So, following discussion in the SPS committee, the chair drew the matter to the attention of the Codex Commission, which subsequently adopted a standard establishing a maximum residue level for SO2 in cinnamon. So, therefore, I mean this the committee set and negotiated among the complaints raised by another I mean European Union. So, they discuss each other and the chair in the committee paid the attention on it and set the standards. So, as a result what really happened, EU decided to base its requirements to the Codex standard, and by the end of 2006 Sri Lanka reported to the SPS committee that this issue had been satisfactorily resolved in their cinnamon production and export. And that is all about one of the SPS agreement which has actually helped the member countries to solve the disputes related to trade movement from one country to another country. So, we have discussed in short what are the number of SPS restrictions, how it is different than that of TBTs, and under which segment SPS is more prevalent, and how developed countries and developing countries are actually practicing SPS. And we have seen that especially it is for agriculture sector, and in developing country used to apply this over time. Lastly we said we observed that cinnamon case of Sri Lanka where the dispute have been successfully resolved. So, I think we have completed our non-tariff major section with this week, and we have discussed so many aspects, tariff, non-tariff, number of protection in detail. Now, we are going to talk about agreements related multilateralism, regionalism in the next week, and the next class we will be starting with WTO and its function. With this I think I should stop here. Thank you so much.